A lot had changed between the production of Portal 2 after Portal 1. Ever since Shell was put back into cryostasis, everything about Aperture Science had been expanded, literally. We were given more in-depth narrative and storytelling. We have a beginning, a middle, an end, and even a tie-in with the Half-Life series. They introduced new characters like Wheatley and Cave Johnson. They even gave Portal 2 their own textures this time so the game can stop looking like a source mod. With Portal becoming its own, it only made sense that the second soundtrack would sound completely different from the first. If Portal 1 was a tribute to Brian Eno, then Portal 2 was a tribute to Aphex Twin and Atatra. Atatra?
Attacker.
Thanks? Portal 1 consisted of lush but haunting ambient synth pads that served as a constant reminder of just how alone you truly are. It's you, gray and black walls full of cameras, and a robotic voice that you become increasingly aware is trying to kill you as time goes on. While just as dark, Portal 2 took a different approach in narrative and warranted a different sound. Something I could only call a chaotic fusion of electronica, IDM, industrial, ambient, avant-garde, music concrete, and minimal orchestral textures. This video is my breakdown of what is going on in the soundtrack and how I would go about recreating the sounds from the Portal 2 score. While synths are at the forefront and are ever present throughout the score, there are plenty of organic instruments everywhere. In fact, the lead instrument in the score is often a softly arpeggiated electronic keyboard. Other organic instruments in the score include, but are not limited to, harps, brass, woodwinds, and sustaining strings. However, there is always something off about the organic instruments, whether it's in how it's played or how it's processed. Even the organic instruments are samples to give off the impression that it could be something played by the robots at Aperture Science.
And even the orchestral music is samples on purpose so that it sounds like it's artificial, like GLaDOS could have written it.
The percussion ranges from big takeover hits to trippy IDM beats ripped almost as if directly from something you might hear on drug use. The big takeover hits, while used sparingly, reverberate around the tracks as if it were a big pumping mechanical engine that can be heard throughout the walls of the facility. Often applied to communicate movement and action-based tension to the player, the fast-paced drum beats, glitchy and metallic sounding, extend through to genres like dance, breakbeat, and IDM. They are often chopped up and have a very unnatural robotic sound to them. If you have an extra $250 lying around, you can use the plugin Isotope Break Tweaker to chop up the beats for you to achieve a similar effect. Or you can save your money and just chop them up yourself. It's tedious and time-consuming, but it's the most effective and accurate approach. Make a beat as you would any other, zoom into something like 1/16, chop up the beats with a knife tool, and move the excess notes around to create the desired effect. It'll take a lot of trial and error, but eventually it'll sound right. You can also bit crush them to get that final metallic sound. Far from an 8-bit soundtrack, but much of the synths of Portal 2 utilized a chiptune plugin called Chip Sounds, which emulates the distinct microchip sounds of old analog hardware like the Nintendo Game Boy, but were manipulated in a way to operate like real synthesizers. The harsh and distinct sound design of Portal 2, however, is relatively simple and can be achieved without the use of chip sounds. To get this sound, you just need any capable subtractive or wavetable synthesizer, take a square wave, and use the hard sync on the oscillator, and that's pretty much it. You can also attach an LFO to the cutoff for added effect. Try to make it sound like a machine rotating. It's been stated before, but one of the overarching goals of the soundtrack was to make it seem as though it could have been performed by the robots in Aperture Science themselves. And I think that's most apparent in how the songs are written. Many of the songs consist of repetitious arpeggios ascending up and down the scale to an almost extraordinary accuracy.
Guess what? You will never be able to hit those notes with that type of precision and accuracy, because you are a pitiful human who is prone to mistakes and has stubby fingers. Leave it to the robots.
She's right, actually. About the accuracy and precision, I mean. Which is fine. There are plenty of tools that can help with that. You can use an arpeggiator like Cthulhu, which will take a chord progression and play each note of it in an arpeggio. Some synthesizers also have this option built in. You can also take advantage of some of the AI tools that are available now that weren't when the soundtrack was written. That might be an interesting idea all of its own. I won't go too in depth on music theory because it's not my strongest area, but I will say many of the songs do not resolve and are really just percussive sound collages littered with sound design and ear candy. And glitchy beats. This is the part of the video where I apply some of what I've discussed in a short cue I've made. The song is a simple 1/5 in D minor and has electronic piano, brass, synths and percussion and glitchy drums. It's a mostly ambient piece that builds up to some tension. The electronic piano has been bit crushed because I didn't use lower quality samples from the beginning like I should have, and the notes are being triggered by the Cthulhu arpeggiator like mentioned earlier. The low stabbing brass is also bit crushed and severely cut in the high end, and serves more as a bass. The percussion that follows also has the highs cut off. The first synth that appears was made with Serum and serves as a texture layer played in the tonic of the song. The second synth was made similarly, but is played through a different arpeggiator called Kernu. Lastly, the glitch beat was made with Break Tweaker. I got it on discount, with a lightly modified stock preset for the sake of saving time. As you can tell, it's not a perfect replication, but I think it captures the same idea. The Portal 2 soundtrack means a lot to me. It served as an introduction to a lot of other electronic genres and artists, and is a big reason why I picked up a DAW and wanted to learn more about music production in the first place. I was really intrigued by the sound design of the synths, and I spent years scouring the internet for instructions on how to recreate them. I would say it was frustrating to find out just how simple it really was, but at the time I was just happy to have finally figured it out. I don't see as much praise for the second soundtrack as I do for the first, so I can only assume it's not as important to everyone else as it is to me. But to anyone else who feels the same, I hope this video did it justice in some way.